The sterile quiet of the Riverside Wildlife Medical Center was a comfort Dr. Thandi and Lovu usually savored in the pre-dawn hours. Not today. At precisely 05:17 a.m., the tranquility shattered. A shrill, insistent wail tore through the empty corridors, a security alarm screaming its urgent message. Thandi, already in motion for an emergency giraffe delivery, felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Alarms meant trouble. Rarely good, especially this early. Her phone vibrated in her hand almost immediately. It was Saifo Makize, the night security guard. "Dr. Ndlovu, you need to get here now." Saifo's voice was tight with tension, stripped of his usual easygoing demeanor. "There's a situation at the main entrance." Thandi's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She broke into a run, her boots echoing on the polished linoleum. Rounding the corner to the main entrance, the scene that greeted her stole her breath and every rational thought from her mind. Saifo was frozen, a tranquilizer gun held loosely, yet defensively, in his trembling hands, his eyes wide with terror. He wasn't staring at an intruder or a rogue antelope. He was staring at a massive, adult male lion. The lion, Atlas, stood motionless just beyond the clinic's automatic glass doors, a formidable silhouette against the burgeoning pre-dawn light. He wasn't alone. Curled on the cold concrete beside him was a tiny, impossibly still lion cub, Tao, its golden fur matted with dark, wet blood around its front paw. Thandi's mind raced, desperate to reconcile the impossible. Lions don't seek human help. They don't bring their injured young to a veterinary clinic. This defied every scientific principle, every behavioral study she had ever known. It was a primal scene, yet fundamentally out of place, chilling in its unnaturalness. Then Atlas shifted, his amber eyes locking onto hers through the reinforced glass. There was no aggression, no predatory glint, only a desperate, raw intensity that mirrored her own shock. He nudged Tao with his massive head, a gentle, deliberate push towards the doors. An unspoken plea. "Open the outer doors, Saifo," Thandi commanded, her voice betraying none of the seismic terror erupting within her. Every cell in her body screamed against the suicidal order. "Are you insane?" Saifo hissed, horrified. But Thandi's gaze was fixed on Atlas and the dying cub. "Open them!" With a shuddering breath, Saifo complied. The doors hissed open, releasing a gust of cool morning air. Atlas, with astonishing gentleness, nudged Tao a few more inches inside the threshold, then backed away, never breaking eye contact with Thandi, his massive body a picture of coiled tension and profound trust. The faint sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Kwanele Zulu, head of large animal surgery, arrived with two members of his team, tranquilizer rifles poised, their faces etched with alarm. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Kwanele hissed, his eyes wide as he took in the surreal scene. Thandi was already kneeling by the cub, her hands moving instinctively to assess the damage. "Look at him, Kwanele. He's not threatening. He brought his cub here." Tao was barely breathing. Deep puncture wound, likely from a snare. "Severely dehydrated and feverish," Thandi murmured, her fingers tracing the delicate bone structure of the cub's leg. She could feel the faint tremor of its tiny body. Kwanele's initial disbelief began to shift, a cautious wonder replacing his anger as he watched Thandi gently lift the cub. "I need to get this little one into surgery now." As Thandi rose, carefully cradling Tao, Atlas let out a low, mournful sound, a guttural rumble that vibrated through the air, not a growl of aggression, but a deep, almost human cry of worry and distress. It was a sound that haunted her even as she carried the cub deeper into the clinic. Inside the sterile examination room, with Tao under warming blankets, Thandi returned to the wound. Her fingers explored the edges of the laceration, then paused, a cold ripple tracing down her spine. The wire. It wasn't the crude, often haphazard material of a typical poacher's trap. This was different, strangely braided, almost industrially precise. "This isn't typical poacher work," she muttered to herself, a chilling realization dawning on her, hinting at a danger far more organized, far more sinister than she could possibly imagine. The operating theater was a crucible of fluorescent light and focused intensity. For 2 arduous hours, Thandi fought for Tao's fragile life. Her hands, usually steady, trembled with the sheer weight of the responsibility. She cleaned the infected wound, meticulously repaired damaged tissue, and administered life-saving antibiotics. Each stitch was a silent prayer. Outside, the impossible vigil continued. From the panoramic windows of the clinic, Loisy, a junior vet, watched Atlas. "He hasn't moved an inch," Loisy breathed, his voice hushed with awe. "He's just waiting. It's extraordinary." The massive lion remained a statue of amber fur and unwavering focus, his gaze fixed on the entrance, a silent sentinel of hope and despair. Thandi finally emerged, peeling off her blood-stained gloves. Exhaustion clung to her like a shroud, but a cautious optimism flickered in her eyes. "Stable for now," she announced to her anxious team. "The next 24 hours are critical." A powerful, almost visceral instinct pulled her towards the outer doors. Quanele's warnings to maintain distance were overridden by a profound need. "I need to let him know," she explained, her voice low, "that his cub is alive." Defying every protocol, every ounce of rational fear, Thandi walked to the glass, Atlas's amber eyes tracking her every movement. She knelt, placing her palm on the cool surface. "Your baby is going to be okay," she spoke softly, her voice carrying through the insulated glass, hoping against all reason that he understood. "We're going to help him." Atlas responded with an action that stunned everyone. Slowly, majestically, he lowered his massive body to the ground, settling into a posture of patient waiting, of profound trust. It was an unspoken affirmation, a silent pact that resonated deep within Thandi. During the surgery, Thandi had extracted fragments of the snare, a painstaking process. Now, in the quiet solitude of the lab, she examined them under the microscope. What she saw sent a cold dread through her. Tiny, perfectly uniform synthetic fibers, woven with an unnerving precision, unlike any natural material, unlike any conventional wire she'd ever encountered. "This isn't just a simple wire," she murmured, a chilling suspicion solidifying into something tangible. This wasn't random. This was engineered. Back in recovery, a faint tremor ran through Tao. His tiny eyelids fluttered. Signs of consciousness. Thandi's heart swelled. She carefully lifted the cub, carrying him to a large observation window overlooking the grounds where Atlas kept his vigil. Atlas saw them. He rose, moving closer to the glass with a fluid grace that belied his immense size. A soft, rumbling call, deep and resonant, emanated from him. From Thandi's arms, Tao weakly answered, a tiny mule. Atlas pressed his massive paw against the glass, aligning it with Tao's bandaged leg, a silent, powerful bond. The sight brought tears to Thandi's eyes. Driven by this incredible connection, Thandi gathered food and water. She placed it outside the secure perimeter. Atlas accepted it, his movements slow and deliberate. Then, Aiden, to the astonishment of the few remaining staff, he picked up a large chunk of meat and carried it back to his original vigil spot. Another clear act of calculated trust, a refusal to abandon his post. The relative peace was shattered by the arrival of Director Nkosi Kumalo, flanked by several stern-faced officials. He exuded an aura of authority and irritation. "Dr. Ndlovu," he began, his voice clipped. "This situation is an unacceptable risk. We need to tranquilize and relocate him immediately." Thandi stepped forward, her fatigue replaced by a surge of defiant protectiveness. "He has shown no aggression, Director. Tranquilizing him now would betray the trust he's placed in us. It could even jeopardize Tao's recovery." Kumalo's gaze was unnervingly cold, devoid of the usual warmth she associated with the conservation. "Dr. Ndlovu, this is an apex predator. His unusual behavior is precisely why he's a risk. The media is already descending. We cannot have a wild lion camped outside our facility." A chill snaked through Thandi. Kumalo's eagerness to remove Atlas, rather than study this unprecedented phenomenon, felt deeply suspicious. "This could revolutionize our understanding of lion cognition," she insisted, pushing for a continued observation, a chance to learn, to witness this miracle. A tense compromise was reiterated. Atlas would stay, but under strict, round-the-clock watch. Kumalo's icy demeanor and blatant dismissal of the scientific importance of the event made Thandi question his motives. This wasn't just about safety, she sensed. There was something else at play, something hidden beneath his polished exterior. Days blurred into a routine of cautious hope. Tao, against all odds, showed remarkable improvement. His small frame grew stronger, his eyes brighter, though a faint scar would forever mark his foreleg. Thandi found herself dividing her time between the cub's diligent care and daily visits to Atlas. A silent, profound bond had solidified between them, an unspoken agreement that transcended species. Atlas would watch her with an intensity that suggested understanding, a deep-seated intelligence that continued to defy all conventional wisdom. But beneath the surface of relief, Thandi's suspicion festered. Driven by the uncanny nature of the snare, she had secretly sent samples of the synthetic fibers from Tao's wound, along with a blood sample, to an independent lab for advanced analysis. Bypassing official channels felt like a betrayal of procedure, but her gut screamed of a deeper threat, one that official channels might inadvertently suppress. The results, when they finally arrived, were chilling. The fibers were a bioengineered polymer, unlike anything known to commercial industry. Designed to be nearly invisible, incredibly strong, and biodegradable after a set period, they were clearly linked to specialized, silent capture devices, what the lab tech had chillingly referred to as smart snares. The sophistication was terrifying. Furthermore, Tao's blood sample revealed faint but undeniable traces of a fast-acting, non-lethal sedative. This wasn't a cub stumbling into a haphazard trap. This suggested he wasn't merely caught by chance, but targeted, intentionally captured. Thandi confronted Quanele and Loazi in the quiet of the empty staff room. The printed reports spread across the table like damning evidence. Her voice was low and urgent, laced with a fear she hadn't felt since her first encounter with Atlas. "This isn't just poaching," she stated, pointing to the data. "This is a highly advanced covert operation. Whoever is behind this is well-funded, technologically sophisticated, and operating with absolute impunity." Quanele, visibly disturbed, initially tried to dismiss it as an anomaly, a rare, unfortunate incident. But the evidence was undeniable, staring them in the face. Loazi, usually calm, looked genuinely worried, his brow furrowed as he traced the intricate molecular structures on the printout. The pressure from Director Kumalo intensified. He was growing impatient with the Atlas's extended stay, pushing Thandi to prepare for their immediate release, emphasizing the need for a return to normalcy. His insistence felt less about protocol and more about convenience, a desire to sweep the unusual event under the rug. Thandi's moral conviction hardened into an unshakable resolve. She could not, in good conscience, release Atlas and Tao back into a reserve where such advanced, unethical operations were clearly underway. To do so would be to send them back into the jaws of a silent, unseen predator. She tried to raise her concerns about the bioengineered snare and the sedative traces with Kumalo in his office. He listened, his face impassive, then dismissed her findings as unfounded speculation and unscientific paranoia. His gaze, devoid of any genuine curiosity or concern, felt like a wall. Kumalo's insistence on a swift resolution, coupled with his outright refusal to even consider investigating the origins of the snare, solidified Thandi's belief in a deliberate cover-up. He wasn't just dismissing her, he was actively shutting down any inquiry. All the while, Atlas continued his vigilant watch. Thandi noticed his gaze following her more intently, his intelligent eyes seeming to sense her growing unease, her secret burden. It was as if he knew she carried the weight of their precarious situation, understood the silent war brewing. Nomusa, a bright intern who often hovered nearby, began to notice things. Snippets of Thandi's hushed conversations, the furtive glances exchanged with Quanele and Loazi. More tellingly, she started observing Kumalo's behavior, his increased phone calls, the secretive meetings in his office with men in tailored suits she didn't recognize, their cars unmarked. A cold certainty settled in Thandi's gut. The depth of the danger was not just to Tao, but to the entire delicate ecosystem of the reserve. This wasn't just about saving one cub. It was about uncovering a dark truth hidden within the very heart of their sanctuary. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. What if Atlas and Tao weren't just victims, but messengers? What if their impossible arrival was a desperate plea for help, a warning? "We need more proof," Thandi whispered to Loazi, her eyes dark with resolve. And we need to know who is behind this. She knew with chilling clarity that this was just the beginning. The chilling data from the independent lab had solidified Thondi's resolve. She could not, would not stand by. Fueled by a fierce moral conviction, she made the agonizing decision to break every protocol and covertly investigate the source of the bioengineered snares and the peculiar sedative. The stakes were impossibly high, but the alternative, releasing Atlas and Tao back into an unseen threat, was unthinkable. She confided in Loisy and No Musa, laying out her findings, her voice low and urgent as she relayed the horrifying implications of smart snares and targeted sedation. No Musa, young but possessing a keen observational intellect, confirmed Thondi's fears. "I've noticed it, Dr. Indlovu," she whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and indignation. "Director Kumalo, he's been making strange phone calls, always late at night, in hushed tones. And those late-night trips, his unmarked vehicle leaving the reserve. This is a massive risk," Loisy warned, running a hand through his hair, his face etched with worry. "We could lose our careers, our licenses, possibly more." He looked at the incriminating reports, then at Thondi's determined face. "But if what you say is true, we have no choice." A silent pact formed between them, a dangerous alliance born of necessity. Thondi immediately put the clinic's internal network to a use never intended. Working late into the nights, they cross-referenced recent wildlife injury reports, looking for patterns of similar snare wounds or unexplained sedatives. It was painstaking work, but their efforts bore fruit. They discovered a cluster of unusual injuries, not necessarily lion-related, in a specific remote sector of the Limpopo Reserve, far from any known poaching routes or human settlements. It was a blind spot, a place where illegal activity could flourish unnoticed. The most unnerving element of their nascent investigation, however, remained Atlas. During Thondi's daily interactions, the massive lion demonstrated an uncanny awareness of their discussions. When she spoke about the snare or strange chemicals, in hushed tones, Atlas would shift, his gaze intense. One evening, as Thondi paced her office, muttering about the suspicious cluster of injuries, Atlas nudged his head against the glass, then turned, padding a few feet away before looking back at her. He repeated the action, guiding her gaze towards an old, rarely used reserve map tacked to a dusty bulletin board in her office. Thondi walked to the map, a shiver running down her spine. Feeling Atlas's intense, knowing gaze from outside the window, she scanned the area corresponding to the suspicious sector. Her eyes landed on faded markings, almost imperceptible, indicating a defunct research outpost, long abandoned, deep within that remote territory. A chill of realization washed over her. Was he leading her? Director Kumalo's behavior became overtly suspicious. His unannounced visits to the clinic grew more frequent, his questions more pointed, thinly veiled threats woven into his smooth words. He inquired about Thondi's extended research into the snare and the cub's unusually fast recovery, his eyes always cold, assessing. "Your devotion to these animals is admirable, Dr. Ndlovu," Kumalo had purred during one such visit, a smile that didn't reach his eyes playing on his lips. "But straying from protocol has consequences. The board expects results, not distractions." Thondi felt the walls closing in. The weight of Kumalo's implied threats was crushing, yet Atlas's silent, protective presence outside the clinic emboldened her. He was a constant, powerful reminder of what they were fighting for. Then, Nomusa delivered another unsettling piece of information. "Durindlovu," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw it. A new discreet camera, installed near your office window. They're watching you." The implication was clear. Kumalo wasn't just suspicious, he was actively monitoring her. Thondi knew they were running out of time. She devised a plan, desperate and dangerous. The upcoming release simulation of Atlas and Tao into the large, secure enclosure outside the clinic, a media event designed to reassure the public, would serve as a diversion. Under the guise of field research for the release, she could get a small, trusted team out to the old research outpost. She knew this was insubordination of the highest order, career suicide, possibly worse, but the lives of countless animals, and the truth behind this terrifying conspiracy, were at stake. She had to act. "We need to move quickly," Thandi told Loazi, her voice firm, "before they try to silence us completely." As if sensing the gravity of her words, Atlas, from his patient vigil, let out a low, resonant rumble. His amber eyes fixed on Thandi, a silent pact of understanding solidified between human and beast. The game had truly begun. The battered land cruiser rattled over the increasingly uneven terrain, a distant echo of the clinic's controlled environment. Under the pretext of checking the release enclosure and attempting to track Atlas, a cover story Thandi had painstakingly crafted, she, Wazi, and Nomusa ventured deep into the remote, forgotten sector of the Limpopo Reserve. The air inside the Jeep was thick with apprehension, each bump of the tires a jolt to their already frayed nerves. "Atlas's intel better be good," Loazi mumbled, gripping the dashboard as they swerved to avoid a hidden ditch. As they pressed deeper, Thandi's trained eyes spotted anomalies, subtle disturbances in the bush, glints of metal partially obscured by leaves. They were bypassing a series of camouflage sensors, covert measures far beyond typical reserve security, confirming her fears of a sophisticated operation. Finally, the sparse, overgrown trail opened into a clearing. What greeted them was not a derelict outpost, but a highly sophisticated, hidden research facility, partially built into a sheer rock face. It bristled with advanced tech, its entrance disguised, and a camouflaged drone launch pad lay almost imperceptibly on the flat roof. A metallic hum thrummed faintly in the air. Fear warring with urgency, they found an access point. Inside, a pristine lab stretched before them, gleaming with state-of-the-art equipment. On data screens and printed documents, Thandi's heart sank. She found detailed schematics of advanced bioengineering, genetic manipulation, and chilling protocols for adaptive predator control. Among the horrifying jargon, she saw designs for the smart snares, the very ones that had nearly killed Tao. The terrible truth slammed into her. The snares and sedatives were not for poaching, not for illicit animal trade. They were for capturing and experimenting on high-value apex predators, potentially altering their behavior, their instincts. "They're trying to control the wild," Thandi whispered, horrified, her voice barely a breath. Atlas's impossible intelligence, his uncanny trust, his protective presence, it was all a direct, horrifying result of these experiments. Tao had been a test subject, a data point in a monstrous game. Adrenaline surged. They worked quickly, Loazi downloading data onto an encrypted drive, Namusa photographing documents with her phone. Every click of the camera felt deafening. As Namusa moved to capture a particularly damning schematic, her foot snagged on a barely visible laser beam. A silent alarm flared to life, not audible, but a cascade of red alerts flashing across hidden monitors within the facility. A low rumble of engines grew rapidly from outside. Too late. Director Kumalo, accompanied by 6 armed, non-reserve security personnel in dark tactical gear, strode into the clearing, blocking their escape path. His face was a mask of cold fury. "I warned you, Dr. Ndlovu. Some secrets are best left buried." Thandi glared at him, a fierce, protective rage erupting within her. "You're sacrificing this entire reserve for a hidden agenda. Atlas and Tao were just test subjects to you. What have you done to them?" Kumalo merely raised his hand, a chilling signal. "Take them. Secure the data. No witnesses." The armed men moved in, closing the circle around Thandi and her terrified team. Just as capture seemed imminent, a powerful, earth-shaking roar echoed through the clearing. Atlas. He emerged from the dense bush, a force of nature, his amber eyes burning with a primal fury. But he wasn't alone. A small, coordinated pride of lions, 4 adults, followed him, moving with an unnatural precision, fanning out to flank Kumalo's bewildered team. The enhanced intelligence was undeniable. The lions, seemingly organized by Atlas, engaged the armed men. Snarls, shouts, and the crack of tranquilizer darts being fired into the air filled the clearing, creating chaos and a desperate opportunity. Atlas's eyes remained locked on Thandi, a fierce, protective glint urging her. "Run!" Thandi screamed, clutching the now glowing encrypted data drive. She and her team scrambled, making a desperate dash for their jeep, the roar of lions and the shouts of men filling the terrifying twilight. They were caught in the crossfire of a war they barely understood, The hunters now undoubtedly the hunted. Thandi, Luazi, and Nomusa, their hearts pounding in their chests, barely escaped the clandestine facility. The coordinated, almost strategic intervention of Atlas and the pride of lions had provided a desperate window. They sped back to the clinic, the encrypted data drive clutched tightly in Thandi's hand, the growls of the lions and the shouts of Kumalo's men still echoing in their minds. They arrived back at the Riverside Medical Center just as a large press conference was about to begin. The event, intended as a heartwarming reunion and eventual release for Atlas and Tao, now felt like a cruel irony. The media, a chaotic throng of cameras and microphones, buzzed with anticipation for the official story. Thandi faced an agonizing decision. Her life, Luazi's, Nomusa's, their careers, their safety, hinged on her next move. Should she remain silent, ensure their immediate safety, and find another way to expose the truth? Or should she seize this moment, risk everything, and expose the horrifying operation before the world? Her moral compass, sharpened by Atlas's impossible trust, pointed to only one path. She chose truth. Pushing past startled officials, Thandi stepped onto the podium, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. Her voice, though trembling at first, solidified into resolute clarity. "We are here today for more than a miracle," she declared, overriding the official narrative. "We are here to confront a betrayal." She held up the data drive. Then, with a fierce conviction, she revealed the bioengineered snares, the genetic manipulation research hidden within the reserve, and Director Kumalo's central involvement. She presented the data, irrefutable proof of a monstrous plan to control and alter the wild. Chaos erupted. Reporters clamored, shouting questions, their cameras flashing wildly. Officials panicked, scrambling to regain control. Kumalo, enraged, his face contorted, stormed forward, attempting to shut down the broadcast, denying everything, his authority crumbling before their eyes. As Kumalo's security, now clearly identifiable as complicit, attempted to seize Thandi, a thunderous roar ripped through the air. Atlas, still maintaining his vigilant post outside the clinic's glass facade, let out a primal sound that vibrated through the entire building, silencing the room. Every head snapped towards him. Then an equally defiant roar answered. Tao, now fully recovered and present in a temporary enclosure nearby, responded to his father's call, his small form powerful, his eyes locking with Atlas's through the glass. It was a roar of solidarity, of survival. Atlas approached the glass, his massive form filling the frame, his gaze sweeping over the astonished crowd. Then his amber eyes settled on Thandi, a profound, almost human acknowledgement in their depth. He was her silent, powerful witness, the living embodiment of her evidence. At that moment, Dr. Aisha Khan, a leading ethologist who had been studying Atlas's behavior from afar, stepped forward. Her voice, calm but authoritative, supported Thandi's claims, speaking of Atlas's unprecedented gratitude and untamed, yet organized intelligence. She presented her own research, reinforcing the extraordinary nature of the lion's actions. The global media, captivated by the raw drama and the extraordinary presence of Atlas and Tao, broadcasted the revelation live. Headlines blared, "Corporate cover-up," "Classified experiment," "The lion who spoke." The world watched as Kumalo and his co-conspirators were arrested, their hidden facility raided, its monstrous secrets brought into the light. Atlas and Tao were not released back into a dangerous unknown. Instead, they became central figures in a newly established, ethically guided interspecies research program led by a now globally recognized Dr. Thandi Ndlovu. The unprecedented gratitude and organized behavior of Atlas and the other lions who had protected Thandi were hailed as a turning point, forcing humanity to reevaluate its relationship with the natural world, demanding a deeper, more respectful understanding of animal sentience. The story of Thandi, Atlas, and Tao became a global phenomenon, symbols of a fight for true conservation, proving that some connections transcend species, language, and even the darkest human agendas, a testament to courage and the untamed spirit of the wild. The blare of a security alarm at 5:17 a.m. at the Riverside Wildlife Medical Center on the outskirts of the Limpopo Wildlife Reserve, had signaled an impossible arrival. No one, least of all Dr. Thandi and Lovu, could have conceived that a male lion, Atlas, would defy all known animal behavior to bring his injured cub, Tao, to their doors. What began as a miraculous rescue spiraled into a chilling odyssey, uncovering a dark, high-tech conspiracy of bioengineered snares and genetic manipulation designed to control the wild. Thandi, risking everything, exposed the sinister operation, and Director Kumalo's complicity lived to the world. It was Atlas, the silent, intelligent guardian, who stood as her most powerful witness, his thunderous roar and protective presence cementing the truth. Their extraordinary bond and the coordinated actions of his pride shattered human arrogance, forcing a global reevaluation of animal sentience. From an impossible dawn, Thandi, Atlas, and Tao emerged not just as survivors, but as symbols of courage in a new era of conservation, proving that some connections transcend even the most audacious human deceptions.